Hello and welcome to the first video of the year. Before I get into my to-be-read books for this year, I wanted to cover a couple of channel updates. So first of all, thank you to everybody who participated in the buddy reads. We had a great time last year doing all 4 books. Now, I do have to say that the participation towards the end kind of tapered off, and I get it. Holidays are busy for everyone. So this upcoming year, I have decided that we're not going to make a big channel announcement. We'll be discussing it in a forum discussion in my Discord. So if you have thoughts on whether or not you want to participate in a buddy read, please come join our Discord to discuss what books, how many, and if we even want to do them this year. Next, I also wanted to throw out the idea that I'm going to open, as of right now today, a new forum for science fiction short stories. I don't think that enough of us have tons of time to read books, and I want to have an option where people with not a lot of time can enjoy science fiction stories also. So there are links to all of the different short stories I'm going to be discussing in my Discord, so you can read and participate and talk in our discussion. There's also going to be an accompanying video at the end of January if you're interested in checking out some of those short stories. And time can't be your reason not to join us, because a lot of these stories only take 10 or 15 minutes to either listen to or read. Next on the docket, I also want to go ahead and say that my single TBR video, I have decided, instead of doing my 25 books for 2025, I am now going to be doing seasonal TBRs, which means I'm going to break my one TBR video I do every single year, and I'm going to break it into 4. So I'm going to do a winter, spring, summer, and fall. I'm doing this because I want to give myself just a little bit more flexibility in what I read, and to allow myself to mood read or do challenges or play around with the books that I'm reading just a little bit more. So we're going to try it out this year. So this is going to be my winter of 2025 TBR. Let me know in the comment section down below what books you plan on reading. And if you have any other suggestions for the channel or for updates, now is the time. All right, guys, let's move on to how did I do with my 24 books for 2024. So if you remember from last year, that video, I had 5 different authors that I was going to double down on and try to read at least 2 books by those authors. So the first author was Neal Stephenson, and I'm happy to report that I did get done with 2 books by Neal Stephenson. I started with a rather unknown book by him called Zodiac, which does refer to a type of boat, by the way, which I didn't really know. It's got very low elements on the science fiction side. I would probably call it more of a contemporary thriller. And then I also got to read Polostan. That was a recent release last year. This is a historical fiction book that I didn't sadly have a very good time with. So I'm definitely going to be going forward only picking up his more science fiction stories. I do own An Anthem by him as well as Cryptonomicon, so I'll probably be picking up one of those 2 next. Then we have Kim Stanley Robinson, and I'm super happy to report that I finally got done with Ministry for the Future and absolutely loved this story. I highly recommend it. It was super good, super fun, and it barely didn't make my best books this year, only because I read so many other good ones. I also read 2312, which I gotta say is a lot more convoluted than I expected. It's definitely for advanced Kim Stanley Robinson's fans only. And I also get a bonus point because I also read Red Mars. Now I gotta say, I just didn't quite get along with the story, I'm sad to say. I will be continuing with the series though, because it's such an award-winning series, but I'm a little hesitant to do so because I just didn't get along with Red Mars. Then we have The Vingies. If you remember, we have both Vernor Vinges and his ex-wife, Joan Vinge. I read 1 book from each of them, happy to say, and I have several other books waiting on my shelves that are calling my name. So the ones that I read last year are are Snow Queen by Joan Vinge, which did win a Hugo, and it was a book that I think both science fiction and fantasy fans will love. I also reread parts of Fire Upon the Deep, which was really fun for me, and I finally got to Deepness in the Sky, which I did absolutely love. It definitely made one of my best books of last year, so I'm really happy I finally got to that. I will be reading more from both of these authors, hopefully soon. Then we have Adrian Tchaikovsky. Now, of course, he is a voracious writer. I mean, holy cow, he just keeps coming out with more and more and more books, and I am just never caught up. But I did, however, finish his book Service Model, which came out last year, which I did enjoy. And I also finished Alien Clay, which he also came out with last year. So I got done with 2 of his novels and a bunch of the novellas. You can tell he's one of my favorite authors, right? And I will continue to be reading him this upcoming year. Finally, we get to Ken MacLeod, which is not MacLeod, and I really appreciate everyone who corrected me in the comment section last year. Ken MacLeod is one that I didn't get to 2 books for. I did get to one of his newer books, which ironically I don't own, which is Beyond the Hallowed Sky. I did like this book, but I found it to be somewhat not memorable, so I need to get to some of the other works that he has done. So I did fail at least one book on him. I'm so sorry. Next, we're getting into some title-specific books. So we have Greg Bear's Darwin Radio. I did get done with this book, so I'm really excited I did. I would highly recommend you pick this one up because it did make my best book of the year last year. Then we have Greg Egan's Permutation City. This is also a book that I had a fantastic time with. This is one that will sit in my brain rent-free for a long time, and I did go ahead and pick up 3 more of Greg Egan's books that I can't wait to get to soon. Then we have the book Raft by Stephen Baxter. This is a book that I failed because I just didn't get to Raft this year. I feel really bad. I don't know what happened. I see it sitting there over there on my shelf, but I do hope to make up for it in 2025, and I'm gonna have to pull this book forward. Then we have the book Damon or Demon by Daniel Suarez. Not only did I finish this book and love it, I picked up the second in that series, Freedom TM, and I had such a good time with this duology. It was a really fantastic cybery thriller story that I would very highly recommend. I do plan on picking up more by Daniel Suarez because of it. Then we have the final book in the 3-Body Problem series called Death's End by Cixin Liu. This book I did finally finish, and holy cow is this book so super long, but I'm so glad I finally finished it. I have a lot of thoughts about the ending of this series. It feels very nihilistic to me, and I don't know how I feel about that, but I am really glad to have finished this book and need to sit down and discuss it and process it just a little bit more. Next, we get Mickey 7, which is a fun book. I did absolutely read this book, and I'm on the wait list at my library for the sequel to this one, so I hope that I can follow Mickey's journey further. The movie for this book did not get released and is instead going to be released in January or March of 2025. So I'm really glad that I read the book before the movie comes out, and we'll see how they do. Then we have Tade Thompson's Rosewater, which I did also finish. It is definitely a very intriguing high-level sci-fi book that I just didn't get quite along with. I just decided that there are too many books out there to pick up the sequels to this one, but boy, was it a really, really intense ride. So definitely one that I'm glad I finally got to. Then we have Blind Lake, which is a book that I haven't really heard a whole lot of people talking about, and that's probably because it's really not that memorable. Blind Lake is a particular city, and so this whole book follows the adventures of the people in this city. It kind of reminded me of Stephen King's Under the Dome. If that's your vibe, then maybe Blind Lake would be something that you would like. Otherwise, I'm glad I could check this one off my list. Then we get to Orson Scott Card's Xenocide. This is the third book in the Ender's Game series, and this is one that I totally failed. Again, I don't have an excuse. I'm not quite sure why it is that I didn't get to this one. I think I just wanted to dedicate a lot of time and energy into pouring myself into this book, but I never got a downtime to spend time with this story. So I need to make it a little bit more of a priority to read for 2025, and I will pull it forward. Then we have the 3 fantasy books that I wanted to read in 2024. The first one is Mirror Empire by Kameron Hurley. This is another fantasy book that I have failed. I know, I'm not good at assigning myself these fantasy books, so I'm going to take it off the list. I'm sad to say this because I love Kameron Hurley as an author, but I'm not going to continue to try to force myself to read a book that I just keep not picking up. Then I assigned myself the book The Passage by Justin Cronin. This is a book that I definitely got to this year, but I was not overly impressed with. I felt like it was kind of meh for its execution, and there were a lot of other books and authors who did the kind of post-apocalyptic and also vampire story a lot better than this particular author, or at least for me. So I did get rid of my copy for this one, but I am glad that I did finally get to it. But I am giving Justin Cronin another chance because I recently picked up a book by him called The Ferryman. So we'll see how I get along with that one. Finally, last but certainly not least on this list is China Miéville's Perdido Street Station. I am right in the middle of this book as we are filming this video, and I have to say, I cannot get over this story. The descriptions and the gritty underbelly of the story and the weirdness, and yet I'm so fascinated I cannot look away. I am loving this story, and it definitely already has a potential to be one of the best books that I've read in 2025. Even though it started in 2024, we'll look past that. We'll look past that. But I am loving it so much more than The City in the City. So highly recommend if you haven't already picked this one up. So I did pretty well for 2024. I think that I got done with all of my goals except for 4, which I'm going to either fail or pull forward. So I think Mirror Empire is going to fail from now on. I'm not going to force myself to read something, but I am going to pull forward a Ken MacLeod book. I am going to pull forward Raft. I am going to pull forward Xenocide. So we have 3 books already for 2025. Now, let's talk about those books that I want to read in the winter of 2025. One of the things that I decided to do with this list is I wanted to use it as a challenge. I want to try to figure out what books I want to read the most. And in writing down my list of shame, because I want to get to those, in taking inspiration from my recent trip to the UK with my dad, which ended up in a fantastic book haul, which I will link for you in the description box down below, as well as taking a really good look at my list of shame, I realized that there is a theme, and that is UK authors or British authors I seem to have somehow ignored. There are quite a few of them on this list, and I decided giving myself this challenge would be a way to get done with some of my list of shame and also try out this winter TBR challenge. So, the first 2 authors that we got to talk about are the ones that I failed for 2024. for. And that is, of course, Stephen Baxter, who wrote the book Raft. I have it sitting right over there. It's looking right at me, so I'm probably going to try to get to that one. But I also came back from the UK trip with quite a few books, and one of them was a Stephen Baxter book that's recent, and it's called Creation Node. So I do also own that one. I also want to get to Ken MacLeod because I do own so many of his books, and I know for sure I want to get to either Learning Worlds, Star Fraction, or Night Sessions by him. I think one of those books would be a really good idea to just kind of give me a better sense of who he is as an author. Now, I have quite a few other authors on this list. Let me know if one should be prioritized. So first is Peter Hamilton. I know this is such a list of shame, but I haven't gotten to any books by him. So I really want to read either Pandora's Star or Fallen Dragon. One of those is on my list. I also have Arthur C. Clarke, and while I have read quite a few books by him, I would really like to get to 2001 Space Odyssey. I have been kind of avoiding this book because of how much I don't love the movie, but I've heard that the book kind of might change my mind, so I'm gonna give it a chance. I also recently acquired 3 of his Rama series hardbacks, so that's gonna be Rama 2, The Gardens of Rama, and Rama Revealed. So I think I might also have the option to read some of those. Then we have Alastair Reynolds. I have read some of his work, but not a lot. And I definitely haven't read his most famous Revelation Space. So that's on this list, as is one of his more recent standalones, Eversion, which I also have a copy of the audiobook of that. Then we have Ian Banks. And you guys, last year I read Player of Games, which was my first foray into the culture, and I loved it. And I recently did a buddy read of The Use of Weapons with Sam from Sam Not So Wise and Bart from Bart's Books. And I will link that discussion in the description box down below if you're interested. But we had such a good time with that story. I will either be getting to consider Phlebas this year, or I will get to The Algebraist. And we as a group, I think, are going to maybe do one of those two as a buddy read. So we'll see how that works out. Next is John Brunner. This author has been a secret classic favorite of mine for a while. And Stan on Zanzibar is a Hugo Award winner that I have been meaning to get to, and I also own it. So that's one that I'm thinking about really hard, as well as one of his books called Crucible of Time. This premise of this story just sounds particularly interesting. I believe it's an alien point of view, which is a trope that I really actually love. So we'll see how that works out. Then we have the author John Wyndham, who we all know is a favorite of mine and is getting a little bit more clout on BookTube. I really want to get to one of his more famous works like The Chrysalids or Midwich Cuckoos, both of which I haven't read yet. Then we have an author that I recently got introduced to, Charles Stross. I own his Atrocity Archives, which is the first book in the Laundry Files series, which is a much beloved series that I haven't read. And then we also have Accelerando by him. I am really hoping to get to one of those. Next on this list is, of course, going to be another Adrian Tchaikovsky story, because he's always churning them out. As a matter of fact, he has another book coming out early in 2025 called Shroud, which I'm kind of interested in. But I also haven't read his Doors of Eden, and I haven't gotten to his Shards of Earth. So I have quite a few books on my list by him that, if possible, I'm hoping to get to. And then to continue this list in this unending TBR, we also have Nicola Griffith and her Ammonite, which I believe is kind of a sci-fi gem that a lot of people really have been recommending to me. I also want to get to one of Emma Newman's books. I believe it's the 4th book in the series called Atlas Alone. It is her Planetfall series, and I haven't finished it yet, so I really want to. Those books are fun and easy, and I really enjoy them. So here's hoping I get to that one. I also wanted to get to one of Claire North's books that has been very intriguing me lately, and that is 84K. This book kind of reminds me of the 7 Pounds movie that Will Smith did, but I'm really interested in hearing what she has to say on the subject. And that does it for my British or UK authors list. I hope I can get to quite a few of these. Of course, it's probably asking a little bit too much to think that I can get done with all of them, but let me know in the comments section if I should prioritize one or the other, and please tell me what books you are planning to read for 2025. I look forward to seeing all of you in the Discord if you're interested in a buddy read or some short stories, and until next time, see ya in the next video.